My name is David Held, and I'm the IPM coordinator for Auburn University State of Alabama IPM programs. We do this project in collaboration with the Alabama Cooperative Extension System, or ACES. Our project has been around since about 2010, and many of the original players are still involved. This has always been a partnership with ACES. We are well integrated in terms of our co-PDs and our programs with the missions and activities of ACES in the state of Alabama. It's really important, the funding for EIP here in Alabama, because we do have such limited support for IPM programs. And the support that we do have for IPM programs is often associated with federally competitive grants or industry funding. So this provides just capacity building funding to make sure we have what we need in order to get and meet the needs of Alabama producers. We have 5 priority areas in this project, and I'll let the co-PDs introduce those areas. What I want to do is talk about the budget. Our allocation of budget matches pretty closely with the acreage and economic impact of these commodities. So the agronomic crops and corn, soybeans, peanuts, etc. in Alabama, just under $1 billion in terms of economic impact, about 30% of our budget. Collectively, about 28% of our budget goes to specialty crops, which is our next largest commodity, I would say, in the state in terms of acreage and economic impact. Pollinator health is growing in Alabama, just under $3 million in terms of honey production sales, and growing year in, year out, and about 15,000 colonies or so managed in the state. The other areas, housing, diagnostics, and others, are really important. We have one of the only projects when we started that had IPM in public housing with Dr. Jinping Hu. Diagnostics is so important also to the IPM mission. And again, we support and have and continue to support the diagnostics through our plant diagnostic lab on campus. Our EIP team, you'll hear from some of these co-PDs later in the presentation, but basically are allocated by each one of their commodity groups. So Dr. Steve Lee's agronomic crops. We have several co-PDs that are involved with specialty crops simply because it's very diverse. Pollinator health is headed by Dr. Jeff Williams. Cassie Connor, who essentially is running the diagnostic lab, is our lead for the diagnostic facilities. And as I mentioned before, Dr. Jinping Hu heads our IPM in housing. The EIP team also is well integrated, as I said before, with ACES and supports REAs. This helps, the funds really are for travel to help them get out and meet their needs of their clientele and stakeholders. And other personnel that are involved are researchers in the state that may not have extension appointments, but are doing work in our commodities or applied research that in that work needs to get to our end users. Our objectives are 7 total objectives for our project, include support for programs and the goals of the National IPM Roadmap, and really meeting producer needs. If you look down through the rest of those, we're really talking about supporting REAs, meeting those needs, and getting information, personnel, and programs to those that need it. And then assessing through evaluation any barriers that are left for IPM adoption and how we can overcome those. That whole area of evaluation is being headed up by Dr. Arinava Majumdar. We communicate most of what we do through the Alabama IPM Coordinator newsletter, really common for a lot of this information to be communicated, as well as through the ACES site, aces.edu. We have our own splash page for this project where you can find out really what's going on in various areas of the project. And then, like some other states, we have our own app. Farming Basics app is for the state of Alabama and in the region. And this is where we communicate a lot of the information for each one of our areas, particularly all the plant-based commodities, agronomic crops, specialty crops especially, go right into Farming Basics and tie right into this. This is for education, but also for information delivery, not just for training. That's our program. I look forward to sharing what's going on through my co-PDs in the remaining part of this presentation.
everyone. This is Steve Lee. I'm the Extension Specialist and Associate Professor of Auburn University. I am the co-project director of the Auburn EIP project, Agronomic section. I would like to give a project summary to highlight the key output of Agronomic section from 2021 to 2024. The project objectives include improve current IPM recommendations based on new trials and new data to effectively manage current spectrum of common pests, and also to monitor the progress of new pests and pesticide resistance throughout the state of Alabama. In addition, we want to test the new methods to detect and control pests in agronomic crops utilizing drones. At the end, we want to promote pest control information and IPM recommendations to stakeholders and to conduct result-oriented field demonstrations on farm and in Auburn University field days. The first project to be highlighted is the Alabama Cotton Scout School. This program has been conducted for 65 continuous years, which is the longest running extension program in Alabama history. Scouting School was conducted across 4 locations in each year. Usually there's one in South Alabama, one in Central Alabama, one in Northwest, and one in Northeast Alabama. Total attendance was about 41 persons per location. Total 3-year attendance was 496. This program teaches participants how to scout pests, how to manage pest resistance, how to implement IPM program, and also train the next generation farm manager and implementing the new techniques to manage pests. So based on the survey, 99% of the people attending the scouting school learn new scouting techniques, or they might already be using the techniques they learned from the previous scouting school. 99% of the participants either used extension IPM guide or they would use those IPM guide in future. The program was rated 4.9 out of 5 and 100% called Scouting School helpful, and the average quiz grade was 86%. Also, the cotton entomology program utilizing EIP funding was able to establish a network of cotton contacts, which include farmers, crop consultants, scouts, and retail field advisors from the local agribusiness to provide feedback on insect situation. Because insect situation changes very quickly from day to day, this type of information is highly timely and very useful for management purpose. A lot of the information were collected because of the cotton contacts throughout the state. The estimated economic impact of Scout School and the cotton contacts is estimated to be $8 million. For disease monitoring in Alabama, a lot of work has been done to monitor the economically important foliar disease in cotton. Alabama Extension participated in the Cotton National Predictive Modeling Tool Initiative, which is a multi-state program. The EIP funding was used to help collecting data and monitoring disease in the field. Also, the project team was able to establish monitoring effort for a new virus found for the first time in the United States in Alabama, which is called the cotton leaf roll dwarf virus. These are some of the pictures of the project team member scouting the field, looking for disease in common row crops, and also the functioning of a disease spore collector in the field. So this is part of statewide disease monitoring program. Also, team members was able to study and implement IPM in disease management. So the project team was able to scout and rate cotton, peanut, and small grain in university variety trials to establish variety performance as influenced by different disease pressure. And also multiple IPM trials were conducted across 9 Auburn University research stations throughout Alabama. And the focus was on variety selection, fungicide input, and the interaction between the chemical and the varieties. More work has been done in the last 3 years to elucidate nematode and crop variety interaction. Many maturity group 4 soybeans were planted in central Alabama in fields with high pressure of root knot nematodes. You can see the difference between resistant variety and sensitive variety in the picture in the middle. So the data collected by team member Dr. Kathy Lawrence clearly showed resistant varieties yielded more soybean and also produced very little gall rating versus the sensitive variety. This indicates that IPM control of nematodes can be done with the proper selection of the varieties. This is also true in cotton. In those high nematode pressure fields, if a grower chooses variety properly using a nematode-resistant variety, as can be shown in the figure on the left, the yield can be significantly improved because of the resistant variety, even better than the traditional chemical nematode control. Team member was also able to conduct many popular extension programs in forage weed management throughout the last 3 years. At least 2,518 people were able to receive these IPM programming during the last 2 to 3 years. Over 31 extension programs were delivered during the same time. Over 90% of the participants strongly agree that the information presented in these workshops are very useful in their operation. We also have grower testimony to demonstrate that these programs were very valuable and well received by the growers. Also, more in-service training were conducted to extension agents and the county coordinators to educate them about the pest management and the weed management in pasture. 60% of the respondents indicated their knowledge of common and troublesome weeds increased significantly. 56% of the respondents indicated their knowledge of forage label herbicide increased significantly. Also, in AU Ag Drone program, which is a brand new program, EIP funding was used to support field travels and the field trials to evaluate many new technologies. In this case, the program team was able to use drones, softwares, and artificial intelligence to identify acres that were infected by the weeds. Instead of spraying the whole field, only 12 acres were sprayed, and we captured over 90% of the weeds in this field, which resulted in over 60% herbicide saving, equivalent to about $14.6 per acre. In this case, project team was able to map the cotton field and apply cotton plant growth regulator precisely to manage cotton height and decrease the variation and reduce the environmental footprint. Morning glory before corn harvest is a major problem in Alabama. Project team was able to utilize drone to spray desiccant and completely desiccate the weeds before harvesting the corn, and this was well received and already be implemented by the Alabama corn growers. Many row crop farmers have irrigation ponds, and those irrigation ponds are infested by weeds constantly. Drones have the ability to control these weeds accurately apply herbicides precisely to the target and be able to achieve very good control following the application. So this was the same pond following the drone application. Very, very clear. Over 50 public demonstration and extension presentations and trainings have been conducted in the last 3 years, focusing on agriculture drones. Many participants were high school students and young professionals who are very eager to learn any new technologies that they can learn and be able to use as a profession. So these workshops were very highly rated. So the AU Ag Drone program utilized EIP funding to conduct over 100 field trials, over 50 drone demonstration and presentations in the last 3 years. And also we hosted 2 spray drone end user conference in Alabama, and we had a great attendance coming from over 40 different states and 25 different countries, because the program was offered both in person and virtual. The educational post from the project team reached over 160,000 people on social media with over 25,000 followers. At the end, we would like to thank the continued support of the EIP program and from USDA and NIFA. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me at stevelee@auburn.edu. Thank you, and have a nice day.
On behalf of my co-PD, Dr. Jeremy Pickens, I'd like to talk to you today about our IPM implementation in nursery crops program that we've developed. Nursery crops in Alabama are very important. We rank 10th nationally in terms of our annual sales. We have over 300 producers, many down especially in the Mobile area in Alabama, down along the coast. Many of those are multi-million-dollar producers of sales annually. We did not have funding for nursery crops as part of the specialty crop component until 2017. And this has allowed us to have some great impacts from the previous as well as the current EIP. The current EIP is focused on an introduction of a new pest, chili thrips. Chili thrips moved into Alabama and into ornamental production, particularly outdoor ornamental production. Now, the greenhouse producers knew how to deal with thrips. They've been dealing with thrips pretty much forever. But outdoor producers were not as accustomed to sampling for these small insects. And so chili thrips came in and started accounting for a large increase in insecticide use. But still, growers were experiencing damage. So we put together our project in several objectives to try to address this in the current EIP. Most of these focused on monitoring so we could help growers know when chili thrips were active and how that might relate into us learning more about what they're using and really mitigating the onset of insecticide resistance. Chili thrips throughout the world are quite well known for development of insecticide resistance in populations. And so this was important for us, that we didn't want to have that issue here for growers, that they would be losing important tools to managing these pests. So there are 4 objectives. I won't read them because let me go into detail after I talk about our IPM team. The IPM team for nursery crops includes obviously Dr. Pickens and I, but it also includes Kyle Owsley, who's the station director at the Ornamental Horticulture Research Station in Mobile, commercial hort team with ACES, and several of the key REAs that deal with ornamental crops as kind of their main groups within that commercial hort team. We also rely heavily upon the Alabama Nursery Landscape Association and its executive director, Russell Wood, in order to help connect us with their webinars, educational opportunities, and other things where we can bring our information that we're learning to producers and get that information out. And then also we have collaborating nurseries that allow us to use their spaces and to do on-site demonstration as well as figure out when these thrips are active. So that really is the main objective we've worked on for 2 years. This is a multi-year monitoring study in collaboration with 4 nursery producers in the Mobile area. We've essentially established sticky cards within and outside the nursery to help producers know when these thrips are active, so that they would know when are the main periods when they need to be protecting plants and monitoring. Now, there's a lot going on in this figure, so let me just show you the key times. Really, we see these increases in September and in March. And the time in March is a very large window. It basically runs March through June. And so what we've done is we've taken this message to growers through presentations and as well as other outlets. There are thrips outside the nursery as well as inside the nursery, but we've really focused on the 3s. And that message has really resonated with producers because it's easy to internalize. Remember the 3s. At 3, 6, 9, or at least 3 and 9, because those are times when they absolutely need to be vigilant in monitoring for thrips in their operation, particularly in these susceptible species. Now, on objective 2 is a biological control experiment, and the idea here was we were going to take some of the commonly damaged hosts, the really susceptible ones, and apply what's already known in the literature to biological control of these infested plants, and actually show a reduction of population in a simulated nursery environment. So we did this at Auburn at an outdoor sort of production kind of facility, and then we did it at the Ornamental Horticulture Research Station in Mobile. Now, most of this biological control work is reported in the primary literature. We have very little adoption, though, and I think this demonstration is really going to be an important part to help gauge the adoption here. In addition to this, we used all of these off-the-shelf products from common insectaries where we know producers could just call up and get those and establish relationships if they wanted to go with biological control, including these sachets, and even supporting data like let's look at how long these release to help growers understand what is going to happen when they hang this little bag out on plants in a block. And the message to growers has been really pretty simple. These sachets are going to release over 4 weeks. Biological control can reduce the number of thrips in these stands and reduce damage. It's not an insecticide application. This is one where we're looking at buffering these blocks, particularly the susceptible plant species, against invasion or protect them from damage. And we're not talking about deploying this everywhere in the nursery, but let's focus on these most susceptible plants that they have problems with. Our third objective was insecticide resistance, and this goes back to a grower survey that Dr. Pickens did early on in our project, where we asked 2 key questions. We want to know how they treated for chili thrips and what were they using. About a third, or just under a third, were using preventive sprays. Some of them were using monitoring. Okay, so that was really positive. They were relying, unfortunately, almost solely on spinosad as a product. Some were using some other products, but we see a large number of respondents using conserve as one of their ways, or maybe their only way, in which they were managing chili thrips, which provides a lot of selection pressure. So we went out and took our programming efforts, sort of focused on the entire project, on presentations, field days, and webinars. These are the ways in which we're trying to meet the stakeholders where they are. And as part of this third objective, we developed a product. And I'll talk about that now. So this is a trifold product. When we proposed it, one of the reviewers said that our initial proposal of kind of a slide chart was old. They wanted it to be us to rethink it. We rethought it, got some input, and decided to go with this trifold, almost brochure-like product. And so let me show you what this would look like. So we have biology of chili thrips. We have the products that are registered for chili thrips, and their expected residual based on arthropod management test reports and other literature. We've got recommendations for sampling and places where they can find additional information and connect with the commercial hort team or the extension network in Alabama. This is a really important resource, and this was first rolled out this year at our different trainings. Our final objective is to train the next generation of IPM professional. This is Ariana Littler. She is the PhD candidate that's working with us on this project. It's difficult, I know, to fund students because they think it's all research through this EIP program, but I guarantee you and can assure you that Ariana is getting the full training and extension from Dr. Pickens and from me. She is involved with program evaluation, developing content, as well as going out and doing some of this practical applied research that is needed in order to help the stakeholders. So in 2023, she developed her own program. She evaluated her own program that was delivered to producers in Mobile. And just some of the data from that: 100% satisfaction with a meeting theme and content, 44% knowledge gain, and almost all of them suggested that they would also save money from the information presented. So again, we're training the next generation, very important to Dr. Pickens and I. As I close, I want to thank NIFA for their support of the EIP program, and specifically for allowing us to have the ability to meet the needs for IPM implementation in nursery crops in Alabama. Thank you.
The peach tree industry needs effective IPM strategies to control economically important insects such as the peach tree borer. Greater peach tree borer and lesser peach tree borer are wood-boring larvae that feed in the cambium of peach trees, disrupting the plant vascular system and causing girdling. This results in reduced yield, limb dieback, and tree death. Borer larvae burrow into bark after hatching, making foliar sprays ineffective unless they coincide with egg hatch. Once peach tree borers have gained access to a tree, the tree will emit a stress chemical, ethylene, signaling other borers, leading to repeated attacks. In Alabama, growers utilize a calendar spray program of 5 to 16 insecticide applications per year to manage borers. With this project, we propose to compare peach tree borer damage in orchards under mating disruption versus grower standard control practice. This will lead to the development of extension resources describing the biology, ecology, and management of peach tree borers and stone fruits, and the dissemination of these findings at stakeholder and grower meetings, on-farm demonstrations, and Alabama IPM communicator e-newsletters. Finally, to gauge acceptance of our findings, we propose to conduct surveys of growers who implement mating disruption to determine the efficacy of the developed IPM strategy. Peach orchard locations involved in mating disruption demonstration for the control of greater and lesser peach tree borer were used. Lures embedded with female peach tree borer sex pheromone were placed strategically throughout the peach orchards to divert males away from females, preventing mating. In year 1, we found that mating disruption delayed and weakened pupal emergence peaks compared to the control orchards. There was a 100% reduction in males caught in monitoring traps in the mating disruption orchards, and a 72% reduction in observed pupal emergence castings. These findings were presented to 70 peach growers, and training was provided to 3 Alabama Cooperative Extension regional agents. Development and implementation of IPM strategies for peach borer control was 70% completed, and extension and outreach 2-year follow-up surveys were 70% completed as well. Findings of the regional mating disruption study and the control of greater and lesser peach tree borer were disseminated at field days, webinars, and at the 2023 Alabama Peach Meeting. A survey at the annual Alabama Peach Meeting showed 30% of respondents would utilize mating disruption in the future. Projects like this one are extremely important to the peach industry, and EIP funding is critical to the research and dissemination of research findings to our peach growers and other industry stakeholders. We would like to thank the regional extension agents involved in this project, as well as the commercial horticulture team of the Alabama Cooperative Extension System. We'd also like to thank the staff of the Chilton Research and Extension Center. We would also like to thank the following farmer collaborators.
This is a brief overview of Alabama's IPM for Pollinator Health Program Priority Area as part of our EIP program work. My name is Jeff Williams, and I'm an associate professor at Auburn University in the College of Agriculture, and I work very closely with Jack Rowe and Allison Schabel of Alabama Extension. Jack is through the Auburn University branch, and Allison Schabel is through the Alabama A&M branch. So our overall goal is to implement best management practices for beekeepers so that they can reduce honeybee colony mortality. And we've chosen the deadly parasite Varroa destructor to focus on because of its effect on the industry, not only nationwide, but also here in Alabama as well as regionally. So we have two main objectives. The first is to identify effective instructional approaches for Alabama beekeepers so that we can effectively communicate to these beekeepers via all of our efforts. And the second objective is to demonstrate regional and timely science-based beekeeping BMPs. And again, our focus is on Varroa destructor and integrated pest management of it. So we've chosen Varroa destructor because it is continually identified by beekeepers across the country as the main biological threat to honeybees. And honeybees have been experiencing elevated losses for well over a decade now. Each winter, the national average loss is around 30%. So our goal is to really minimize that elevated loss moving forward. We've also performed several needs assessments, and they've recently demonstrated that Alabama beekeepers do not properly implement IPM towards Varroa destructor or any other honeybee pests. So for example, for Varroa destructor, they frequently do not monitor, or they may not be monitoring with the most effective tool, and they may not be adopting chemical practices or chemical interventions correctly, such as rotation of different active ingredients. We've also found through these needs assessments that beekeepers and their learning opportunities may not necessarily align, especially with adult learning science that's out there in the community. So for example, many of the programs that beekeepers experience here are sort of a one-way communication streak where it's effectively beekeepers sitting in a large lecture hall or a classroom receiving information, have very little hands-on or interactions with the honeybee colonies as well as the instructors. So concerning our first objective, to try to justify improvement of our instructional approaches, particularly diversifying them away from one-way communication, such as traditional lectures, we use monitoring Varroa destructor as like a model. So monitoring Varroa destructor is really critical to implementing a proper IPM program. So of course, it's very important for beekeeper decision making and what kind of treatments they want to use within their colonies. But it's also particularly effective to assess post-treatment activities. So did those interventions actually work? And in many cases, because of the nuances of the different treatments available, that's not the case. So both pre and post treatment monitoring efforts are really, really critical. So the science tells us that one tool called the alcohol wash is the most effective. So that's essentially collecting bees, 300 bees from the brood nest, agitating them in about 30% alcohol to dislodge mites and then count those mites. So that's the most effective tool for monitoring Varroa. However, very few beekeepers in Alabama have used this method. So there's several barriers that we've come across during our needs assessments. For example, frequent quotes are, "I don't know how to monitor at all." So this applies to even more broadly than alcohol wash. But mainly concerning alcohol wash, quotations that we would see would be, "I don't want to kill workers," and "I don't want to kill my queen," because again, the beekeeper would need to collect 300 adult workers, agitate them in alcohol to dislodge the mites, and that will kill anything within that sample. So for this, we teamed up with the Georgia Beekeepers Association, and we studied different educational approaches within 7 bee clubs. So 4 in Alabama and 3 in Georgia. So we had approximately 20 beekeepers participating in this work, and they were divided into two groups. So about half of those individuals received an in-person educational experience that included a live presentation with a Q&A, as well as a demonstration out in the bee yard, and the other half received online education experiences. So a recorded presentation as well as a demonstration. And this online form is fairly common in the beekeeping community, especially during COVID and post-COVID, but there's several really prominent YouTube channels that also present a lot of this kind of education. So that was the relevancy for comparing these two groups, the in-person group as well as the online group in terms of a form of education. So we asked several questions as part of our evaluation of this. One example of a question concerning knowledge gain is the one presented here, asking the participants what is the most accurate method to monitor mites, and our answer, according to the science and our perspective, would be the alcohol wash. During our pre-program assessments, we found there was no difference between the two groups, which we would expect, and this is because, of course, both of these groups haven't gone through our programming yet. So 77% of beekeepers in both groups identified the correct answer being alcohol wash here. As we move through our programming, half receiving online training, the other half receiving in-person training, we found that there was also no difference in the two groups during our post-programming evaluation. So both groups gained knowledge concerning this effective tool, and they were on average about 17% or 17.5% increase, which is really great to see those percentage point increases, but no difference in the effectiveness of knowledge gain. We also asked a few questions concerning adoption of practices. So we asked, for example, the beekeepers how often, or what is the most often or most common monitoring tool for Varroa? And our pre-program assessment found there was no difference between the two groups, is which we would expect. So, for example, the alcohol wash, 14% of the in-person participants perform the alcohol wash versus 11% do in the online group. We also included powdered sugar roll, which is another fairly effective tool, but has some particular nuances. And there was, again, no difference in the rate of adoption of those different methods. However, this is where we did see a really interesting result concerning an intent to change behavior. So leaving our educational experience, 40% of our participants in the in-person program stated that they plan to perform the alcohol wash in the coming months to assess Varroa control. And this is a 25 percentage point increase compared to our pre-programming assessment that was 14%. If you look at the online participants, their percentage point increase was only 3%. So quite a dramatic increase, and this was statistically different between the two groups. Having a quick look over at the powdered sugar shake or sugar roll, we saw beekeepers in both groups leaving our educational experience, deciding that they wanted to do more of those sugar rolls. But interestingly, those in the online experience decided to do more of the powdered sugar. And so a positive for this experience, for both experiences, highlight that this did increase their knowledge and convince these beekeepers that they should be doing more monitoring efforts. However, there's really a particular, for example, educational style that we as instructors might want to appreciate concerning convincing beekeepers to do what may be most effective, such as the alcohol wash in this case. So type of programming appears to matter when you're trying to get beekeepers to adopt certain practices. And we think, particularly concerning the alcohol wash, it does kill 300 workers, whereas the powdered sugar shake or sugar roll doesn't necessarily do that. And so beekeepers really needed to experience that firsthand and maybe with the community to convince them that that was the method of choice moving forward for them. So looking at our objective 2 of our overall EIP program, we really took some lessons learned from Objective 1 and started creating and deploying hands-on workshops. So for the past 2 years, over 150 participants have taken part in our workshops, and those have been really effective. We've got great feedback. All participants say they plan to implement more than one practice that they've been taught, and almost 3/4 of participants state that just by going to those workshops, the knowledge gained there is going to save them at least $50 moving forward. We've done a couple other activities over the project period concerning Objective 2. So we're currently in the final phases of beta testing for a redesigned online beekeeping basics program, and we're looking to deploy that very quickly. We've also deployed an in-person parallel beekeeping basics course for the last 2 years at our state meeting, and we've seen over 150 participants take part in that. Almost 90% of them, through our assessments, have highlighted that they've gained knowledge. And we've also seen that they've really improved their knowledge dramatically. So a 34 percentage point increase in effectively answering the correct question. So really happy with how that's going, and everyone is really excited by that. One of our flagship programs is our at-home beekeeping webinar series. So we've been running that for the duration of the project period, alongside regional land grant institutions, as well as the USDA and Extension Services. We've had more than 7,000 participants over the last 3 years. And again, the majority of those participants say they plan to learn and implement particular practices that are being taught to them. And more than half of the participants taking part at each event state that they've gained knowledge, and on average it will save them about $78. So we're really proud of this event, particularly due to the coordination and efforts of all of our various partners, particularly around the Southeast. Our last main activity is to deploy Sentinel apiaries across the state. So for the last 2 years, we've had 5 different host apiaries, and they're run by local clubs. So local clubs will run these apiaries, and they will invite on a monthly basis their club members to come and get hands-on experiences, such as assessing colonies, looking for pests and diseases. So through our assessment, we found that all of those demonstration yard hosts and their participants have gained knowledge concerning Varroa IPM, for example, or other disease information. And interestingly, that almost 3/4 of those colonies at some point hit what we believe is the treatment threshold. So not only are we helping participants gain knowledge and implement new practices, but we're also really helping those colonies, because in most cases, if these demonstration yards weren't being implemented or performed, beekeepers would probably miss out on these treatment thresholds. So we're really driving beekeepers to get into the habit of checking their colonies, and based on these numbers, they really need to check frequently. Otherwise, their mite levels will go beyond the treatment threshold, which can lead to economic damage. So in summary, this EIP program has been really instrumental in promoting pollinator health, especially concerning honeybees and Varroa destructor integrated pest management throughout the state. Our beekeepers did not have this exposure prior to EIP sponsored funding for this. And so it's really raised our platform to communicate the importance of pest management practices and integrated pest management to our beekeepers, but also to our various beekeeping leaders. So we're frequently meeting with state bee leaders to discuss plans and implementations, as well as, for example, other influential figures such as our Commissioner of Agriculture or public officials. So it's really been instrumental in promoting honeybee health in the state of Alabama, and really appreciate working alongside everyone for this work. Thank you very much.
My name is Xinping Hu. My research project is housing IPM. IPM means integrated pest management. Our program is to take the research-based technology and knowledge to the users. Our goal is first make them aware that IPM program is available. Secondly, we want to increase their knowledge on pest biology and IPM practice. Thirdly, we want to improve the implement of IPM practice for safe housing that is pest improve. Consequently, we want to build a better quality of life, especially for those living in public affordable housing. That's about 149 housing authorities. So that's our ultimate goal. We have workshops, we have training programs. The outcome, we have seen increase in the knowledge and how to apply IPM. The pilot IPM housing had an over 90% deduction in the pest number of pests and the number of complaints from the customers. That's most important. Their pest control costs have dropped dramatically. That is our basic goal. We have knowledge increase, we have economic gain, and we have happy people.
My name is Cassie Connor, and I am the director of the Auburn University Plant Diagnostic Lab. I am also the PI of the IPM support for pest diagnostic facilities. The IPM support for pest diagnostic facilities objectives include providing diagnosis of pest problems, including diseases, nematodes, and insects, also including invasive species identification. Providing IPM recommendations to growers based on their individual situations, and developing publications and fact sheets for grower education based on trends observed in the diagnostic lab. During the 2021 through 2024 project period, we provided diagnosis for a total of 31,605 samples. This includes 4,522 routine plant samples, 2,490 nematode samples, 467 insect samples, and 24,126 survey samples. Routine samples are those that come in needing a diagnosis, whereas survey samples are those where we are testing for specified pathogens, and these include cotton, citrus, and grapes. During the project period, 19 first reports were identified in Alabama through samples submitted to the Auburn University Plant Diagnostic Lab, and one first report was identified from Tennessee. 5 of those first reports resulted in regulatory actions, including Japanese hollyfern mottle virus, zebra mussels and mossballs, sweet potato feathery mottle virus, and citrus canker detected in both Baldwin and Mobile counties. Each year of the project period, our lab maintains certification from USDA, APHIS, CFIST, National Plant Protection Lab Accreditation Program for molecular testing of 3 high-risk diseases important to our area, including HLB, or citrus greening, sudden oak death caused by Phytophthora ramorum, and plum pox virus. We maintain these certifications to help the Alabama Department of Agriculture mitigate disease introductions and to help our growers get testing results quickly. During the project period, we published 3 peer-reviewed publications, 2 extension publications, 9 articles and pest alerts, and provided 16 presentations on plant diseases and management. Throughout each year, we survey 1% of clientele to determine specific impacts to growers based on diagnostics and recommendations provided by the Auburn University Plant Diagnostic Lab. Over the 3-year period, 90 clients were surveyed, which saved an average of $430 per sample from following our recommendations. Based on the number of routine samples examined, we estimate the lab saved clientele $3.8 million. All of the samples and plant health problems are diagnosed at the Auburn University Plant Diagnostic Lab containment facility in collaboration with subject matter specialists. In plant pathology, we had help from Ed Sikora and Amanda Strayer-Scherer. In entomology, we had help from Caitlin Kesheimer, Scott Graham, Ayanava Majumar, Meredith Schrader, and David Held. In horticulture, we had help from Carrie Smith and Jeremy Pickens. And in agronomy, we had help from Steve Lee and David Russell.